Coming to you live from Angkasapuri, I'm Mohanapriya, and this is Updates at Noon. Making the headlines today. Malaysians urged to perform duties as responsible citizens. Terror attack hits the streets of Istanbul. Malaysians who are eligible as voters are called to come forward and perform their duties as responsible citizens of this country by casting the ballots on 19th November. Minister of Communications and Multimedia Tan Sri Anwar Musa said voting rights are protected in the federal constitution. The public are also advised to scrutinise and evaluate their candidates' personality, the parties that they represent, as well as their ideology.
Terpulanglah sama ada parti atau personality. Yang penting ahli-ahli parlimen yang bakal kita pilih mestilah terdiri daripada satu kelompok orang yang berintegriti, yang berwibawa, yang tidak ada tercemar, supaya parlimen sesuai dengan gelaran ahli yang berhormat, biarlah benar-benar orang yang dihormati.
The minister was met after Naratif Khas PRU 15 program in Angkasapuri last night. Meanwhile, Tan Sri Anwar also noted that the Keluarga Malaysia concept has successfully penetrated deep into Malaysians' heart since its introduction 14 months ago. He added the approach has given a better insight for the rakyat into national development agenda. A total of 146,737 Malaysian Armed Forces MAF members and their spouses throughout the country are registered for the early voting in the 15th general election tomorrow. They will cast their ballots at the 153 MAF early voting centres gazetted by the Election Commission (EC). In a statement released, Chief of Defence Force General Tan Sri Afendi Buang hoped that voting would proceed smoothly to allow MAF personnel to perform their duties as a responsible Malaysian. Meanwhile, voting process for MAF personnel registered under postal voters have already begun on 7th November and will end on 19th November before 5 p.m. General Tan Sri Afendi said MAF was also prepared to help the EC, local authorities and other public authorities ensure a smooth polling process on the polling day. As Malaysia is already in the northeast monsoon season, the Chief of Defence said MAF is prepared to mobilise their assets to high-risk areas. 4,057 police personnel from the Johor contingent will be mobilised to face possible flood situation in the state throughout the northeast monsoon season. Home Minister Dato' Sri Hamzah Zainuddin said the operation under the Integrated Enforcement Coordination Committee (JKPB) will be led by PDRM and assisted by other relevant agencies such as People Volunteer Corps, RELA and the Fire and Rescue Department.
PDRM tidak bersendirian, ianya akan dibantu oleh beberapa agensi yang lain seperti agensi-agensi yang ada di bawah KDN, RELA dan juga APMM. Dalam waktu yang sama, jika sekiranya kita perlukan, kita akan mohon bantuan daripada ATM, Angkatan Tentera Malaysia, dan beberapa agensi-agensi yang lain. Dan sudah tentulah kerjasama ini kita perlukan melalui agensi penyelamat seperti bomba jika berlaku adanya banjir atau bencana monsun timur laut.
He said this during the Preparedness on Northeast Monsoon and 15th General Election Media Conference in Muar, Johor yesterday. The Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industries, MAFI, has activated its operations rooms nationwide to assist victims, especially farmers, breeders and fishermen in flood-hit states. Now, MAFI stated in a statement that it had, through MAFI Incorporated in the States, activated the department and agencies to immediately carry out monitoring and be prepared to get down to the ground to inspect the conditions of the affected target groups. The operations rooms will assess the damage and losses incurred as well as to immediately channel aid to the affected parties. The Central Disaster Operations Room has also been activated for preparation regarding assistance intervention to the agro-food community affected by the flood disaster. MAFI said it would always be prepared to channel assistance as soon as it obtains relevant information. Based on the preliminary disaster report of the crop sector, cumulatively until today, a total of 256 farmers, covering an estimated area of 374.81 hectares in 4 districts in Pahang, 2 each in Kedah, Perak and Selangor, and 1 in Johor, are affected. Now, a 1-hour downpour caused flash floods in several precincts of the federal government's administrative centre yesterday. With heavy rain from 3 p.m, the areas of Persiaran Seri Perdana in Precinct 10, the government quarters of Precinct 11A and the health clinic in Precinct 9 were inundated by about 0.3 metres. Putrajaya Fire and Rescue Department Assistant Director of Operations, Mohammad Afizi Zulkifli, said 20 personnel were rushed to the scene after receiving a call at 4:30 p.m. He said the flash flood was believed to have been caused by a blocked drain and firemen cleared the blockage. The water receded completely a few hours later and no victims were moved to a temporary evacuation centre. The water has receded completely after the fire brigade cleared the blocked drain and no vehicle was reported damaged either. A woman died while 6 others sustained injuries after the car they were travelling in hit a trailer near the Sungai Buloh Overhead Bridge restaurants on the North-South Highway bound for Kuala Lumpur early this morning. Selangor Fire and Rescue Department Director Nur Azam Khamis, in a statement today, said 8 personnel from the Sungai Buloh Fire and Rescue Station rushed to the location when the department was alerted of the incident at 6:10 a.m. He said the accident occurred when the car in which the woman was travelling in with 6 other family members hit the back of a trailer which was on the same route. Due to the impact of the crash, the 38-year-old woman was pinned in the front of passenger seat and was confirmed dead at the scene by medical personnel. The victim's 50-year-old husband and 11-year-old daughter were reported to be seriously injured, while 4 other children, including a pair of twins aged between 8 years and 8 months, suffered minor injuries. The injured victims were taken to Sungai Buloh Hospital for further treatment. Three people, including 2 women, were killed after a 2-storey house was caught fire in Kampung Gita in Kuching, Sarawak, last night. The deceased were former Kuching Utara City Council Director Effendi Kali, 69, his daughter Anika, 35, and his niece Nur Hashida Ajis, 22. According to Sarawak's Fire and Rescue Department Director, Datuk Kirdin Rahman, they received a distress call about the incident at 7:03 p.m.
Bila sampai ke tempat kejadian, kita dapati api dah merebak daripada bawah naik ke atas lah. Dan pada masa tersebut, kita dalam proses kita buat pemadaman, barulah dimaklumkan oleh anak saksi bahawa didapati bapa dan juga adik dia, perempuan dan juga anak buah mereka kemungkinan besar berada dalam rumah juga. Dan kita start telah dibuat dan dalam tindakan operasi kita niat tetangga dan kita dapat mangsalah pada jam 8.40.
All of the victims were found in one room inside the house. They are believed to have died from suffocation due to thick smoke caused by the blaze. The deceased also managed to make a video call to inform that they were trapped inside the house. The blaze was brought under control at about 11 p.m. and the bodies of all the 3 victims were sent to the Sarawak General Hospital's Forensic Department for further action. Strong and resolute responses await if Pyongyang continues nuclear tests. That and more coming up next. Now, but first, an explosion tore through a busy Istanbul shopping street on Sunday, killing 6 and wounding dozens in what the Turkish president said bore signs of a terror attack. Police cordoned off an area around Istiklal while crowds were dense on Sunday afternoon and helicopters flew over the city centre as sirens sounded. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan condemned what he called a vile attack that killed 6 people and wounded over 50 others. Authorities offered few details and no groups immediately claimed the blast, but Turkish cities in the past have been struck by Islamists and other groups. Istiklal Avenue had already been hit in the past during a campaign of attacks in 2015 to 2016 that targeted Istanbul and other cities, including the capital, Ankara. These bombs were mostly blamed on the Daesh group and outlawed Kurdish militants and killed nearly 500 people and injured more than 2,000. Sunday's explosion occurred shortly after 4 p.m. in the famous Istiklal shopping street, which is popular with locals and tourists. According to images posted on social media at the time of the explosion, it was accompanied by flames and immediately triggered panic, with people running in all directions. A large black crater was also visible in those images, as well as several bodies lying on the ground nearby. Meanwhile, Turkish Vice President Fuat Oktay said 6 Turkish prosecutors are leading the investigation into the deadly blast in Istanbul. He vowed to bring whoever responsible for the incident to justice at all costs.
Bu olayların arkasında kim varsa, her kim varsa, sonuna kadar, sınırların içinde değil, dünyanın öbür ucuna da gitsin. Bunun arkasından diğer teröristlere nasıl ulaştıysak bunlara da ulaşılacaktır. Ve yine Türkiye'ye getirilecektir, gereği yapılacaktır, yargıya teslim edilecektir. Her ne pahasına olursa olsun bunun hesabı sorulacaktır. Bugün İstiklal Caddesi.
Now, there has been no reports of Malaysians affected by the explosion at the Istanbul's Istiklal Street, which so far has killed 6 people and injured 81 others. In a statement, the Consulate General of Malaysia in Turkey's Istanbul said that it is currently liaising closely with the local authorities, which have been conducting a thorough investigation into the incident. At the time of the statement, there has been no report of Malaysians affected by the incident. The Consulate General is confident that the authorities will hold those responsible for the incident accountable and bring them to justice. The Consulate General also wishes to remind all Malaysians to be aware of the surroundings and to avoid going to crowded places in Istanbul for the time being. The Consulate General of Malaysia can be contacted for any emergencies through its telephone number or email address as shown on your screen. The consulate also expressed its deepest condolences and sympathies to the victims and their families and wished those injured a speedy recovery. The United States, Japan and South Korea on Sunday vowed a strong and resolute response if Pyongyang carried out a nuclear test. A record-breaking recent spate of missile tests by North Korea has sent fears soaring that such a test, its 7th, may happen soon. US President Joe Biden held talks on the crisis with allies Japan and South Korea in Phnom Penh on Sunday on the eve of a crunch meeting with Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, whom he will press to rein in North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol issued a joint statement condemning the recent barrage, which included an intercontinental ballistic missile and another shorter-range projectile that crossed the de facto maritime border and landed near South Korean territorial waters for the first time since a ceasefire ended hostilities in the Korean War in 1953. Seoul and Washington have been warning for months that Pyongyang is ready to conduct another nuclear test at any time. Sunday's joint statement stressed that the path to dialogue remains open, urging North Korea to return to negotiations. Hugging Ukrainian soldiers, blaring car horns and waving flags, the people of Kherson are savouring their newfound freedom. After more than 8 months under Russian occupation, residents of the city in southern Ukraine were celebrating their liberty and taking stock. On the central Svoboda Square, the national flag was flying on the roof of the regional administration building. Several hundred joyful residents gathered there, children, families and the elderly. Meanwhile, Ukrainian soldiers are being greeted like celebrities in Kherson. As soon as they arrive, people come to hug them, with children even asking for their autographs, offering flags and balloons for them to sign. In the street in front of the square, the crowd jeered as a Russian rocket launcher passed by, towed by a Ukrainian military vehicle. Many had come to make use of a wireless internet connection provided by Starlink satellite. There was anger among those gathered over the behavior of Russian troops. At the city's western entrance, where Russian soldiers had manned a checkpoint, young people have been repainting in yellow and blue the concrete blocks that served as shelters for the occupying soldiers. Residents gathered on the side of the road, waving Ukrainian flags and making the sign of V for victory as cars passed. A train in Australia derailed from the tracks it was travelling on after a month of wild weather and widespread flooding damaged the rail. More than 10 carriages derailed from the flood-damaged tracks at 5:30 a.m. local time, smashing dozens of shipping containers as they fell. At least 20 shipping containers were piled on top of each other in the chaotic crash scene about 90 kilometres from Melbourne. The freight train stopped just short of a level crossing, which authorities say has already been reopened. Authorities confirmed that the train tracks had suffered substantial damage during the wild weather and heavy rainfall over the weekend. Authorities confirmed that there were no passengers aboard the freight train and the driver was not injured. Emergency services said there were no dangerous goods on board the train. Investigators are on site trying to determine the cause of the devastating incident. The Melbourne to Adelaide rail corridor is closed while emergency response crews work to clear the accident site. 6 people were killed when a pair of World War II-era planes collided in mid-air at a show in Texas and crashed to the ground in a ball of fire. The Federal Aviation Administration said the aircrafts involved are a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress and a smaller Bell P-63 King Cobra. Multiple videos posted on social media showed dramatic scenes of the smaller plane descending towards the lower flying B-17 and crashing into it as both flew in loops around the airport. The crash scattered debris across the airport grounds as well as on a strip mall and a nearby highway, which was closed for hours. Authorities said fire and rescue vehicles were already at the show in case of an emergency and responded immediately. An estimated 5,000 people were in attendance at the event. Hank Coates, the chief executive of the Commemorative Air Force CAF, whose planes were involved in the accident, said the B-17 normally has a crew of 4 or 5, while the P-63 is operated by a single pilot. He said the pilots who operate the planes during such shows are experienced volunteers with very thorough training and are often retired military pilots. The CAF has some 180 vintage aircraft that fly roughly 6,500 hours per year in air shows, tributes to veterans and training flights. The CAF said the B-17 involved in the crash, which bore a Texas Raiders logo on its nose, was only one of 5 of the bombers that could still fly out of the 12,731 initially built. Next in sports, George Russell claims maiden Formula One victory. Stay with us. National motorcycle racing sensation Mohammad Hakim Danish Ramli created his own history after being crowned as the overall champion in the 2022 Asian Talent Cup ATC season in Lombok, Indonesia. Now, the success saw Mohammad Hakim, better known as Hakim Danish, become the first Malaysian and the second rider from Southeast Asia to win the overall title since the Moto3 trophy race was first introduced in 2014. In the second race of the last round of the Mandalika International Street Circuit today, the 15-year-old Terengganu-born rider finished in second spot behind Indonesian Vede Ega Pratama, thus collecting a total of 187 points to top the rider standings. His closest challenger, Shinya Izawa from Japan, had to settle for second place with a total of 177 points after finishing third in the second race. Meanwhile, the success of winning 2 rounds in the race in Lombok allowed Vede Ega to collect a total of 141 points and seize third position in the riders' ranking list from another Japanese rider, Gun Mie. In the first race that took place in the same circuit yesterday, Carter Thompson from Australia finished second, while Hakim Danish was third. For the record, Hakim Danish managed to take the checkered flag in 2 races of the second round in Lombok last March, followed by the first race in the 4th round in Thailand and the first race of the 5th round at the Sepang International Circuit last month before competing in Lombok this month. Now, following an undefeated run in Group A, reigning champions Terengganu are expected to be a nightmare for Perlis, with both teams settle scores in the quarterfinals of the 2022 Agung's Cup Rugby Championship on 26th November. Now, when the preliminary stage competition ended yesterday, Terengganu topped Group A after beating Malacca 78-3 at the Malacca Matriculation College Masjid Tanah, thus winning their second group match to meet Perlis, who are Group D runners-up. Group A runners-up Johor will face Group D champions PDRM, who are aiming to end a 30-year drought by emerging as 38th Agung's Cup champions after winning all 3 group matches, including a 38-21 victory over Perlis in Kangal on Saturday. 11-time champions Armed Forces ATM, who topped Group B, are scheduled to meet 6-time champions Selangor, who finished second in Group C. Awaiting Group C champions Putrajaya in the quarterfinals are Pahang as Group B runners-up. In the meantime, Malaysian Rugby Union officials, when contacted by Bernama, confirmed that they will finalise the venue for the 2022 Agung's Cup quarterfinals soon. The competition takes a 2-week break to make way for the 15th general election on 19th November before resuming play a week later. Asian Football Confederation AFC Cup 2022 runner-up Kuala Lumpur City FC will need to spend more on players to compete for the title of the best team in the Malaysian Football League MFL League next season. KL City FC head coach Boyan Hodak said the team based in the Klang Valley is one of the clubs with the smallest budget for expenses, making it difficult for him to form the best team this season. Those constraints, he said, caused the City Boys squad to go play important matches without the best 11 in most of the domestic league campaign this season. He said this season was quite hard for the City Boys, especially with the AFC Cup competition, which involved a lot of travelling, adding that some of the players were really tired by the end of the season. The journey of the Croatia-born coach squad in the Malaysia Cup Challenge this season came to a halt when they lost 1-4 on aggregate to TFC. In the meantime, Hodak, who once coached the national youth squad, said he is likely to stay with KL City next season. Accordingly, he expects a bigger budget to prepare a stronger team to face the challenge of the M-League next year. Norway's Casper Ruud kicked off the ATP finals on Sunday with a 7-6, 6-4 win over Canada's Felix Auger-Aliassime. The world number 4 achieved a victory despite Auger-Aliassime hitting 14 aces to his 5, but managed to have a far better second service game than his opponent while successfully converting the only break point of the match. The Norwegian sits behind Taylor Fritz, who beat Rafael Nadal in the standings, with the top 2 from each group progressing to the semis. The world number 4 came through an uninspiring encounter in 1 hour 51 minutes after claiming his one and only chance to break Canadian Auger Aliassim's serve in Game 7 of the second set. The season's Roland Garros and US Open finalists then served out the rest of the set to claim the win. Now, George Russell took an emotional first Formula One Grand Prix victory to end a season-long blank for Mercedes in a 1-2 with 7 times world champion Lewis Hamilton in Brazil. Now, Russell led from the start at Sao Paulo's Interlagos circuit after winning Saturday's 100-kilometre sprint, a race that determined Sunday's starting grid to halt a run of 9 wins in a row by champions Red Bull. In a lively race with 2 safety car periods, honorary Brazilian Hamilton overcame an early collision with Red Bull's double world champion Max Verstappen to race back in front of a cheering crowd. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz finished 3rd, with teammate Charles Leclerc 4th, and unhappy that Ferrari did not order a switch given his battle with Red Bull's Sergio Perez for 2nd in the championship. Russell led away cleanly from the start, with Hamilton slotting in behind, but the safety car was deployed when McLaren's Daniel Ricciardo and Haas' Kevin Magnussen collided on the opening lap. Magnussen, who took his first pole position on Friday qualifying and scored a point in the Saturday sprint, was hit from behind by the McLaren and smashed back into it after spinning around. Russell then managed to restart well and pulled away from Hamilton to take the checkered flag waved by Brazil's retired double world champion Emerson Fittipaldi.
The pit lane.
Reacting to the fact that he is now a Formula One winner and the 113th in the history of the sport, Russell said that this is just the beginning.
I knew we could do this.
Emotional roller coaster. I think when I crossed the line, so many emotions came flooding out. The journey I've been on since the beginning with my family from go-karting, and then the journey we've been on this season with the team, starting off so far off the pace, improving. Then me personally having some very difficult races recently. I had a bit of a reset mentally going into Mexico, and I've been so happy with how these last weekends have panned out, and I'm so proud of the team.
Meanwhile, his Mercedes teammate Hamilton, winner of a record 103 races and 3 in Brazil, congratulated his teammate for an amazing drive.
Yes, it's been an amazing result. An amazing result for the team. Everyone's worked so hard for this result to get us back here, to get us at the front. I'm just grateful I was able to get back from 8th after coming together with Max, and then really, fantastic job to George. He did such an amazing job today, so truly deserved. It was a bit of a more like straight line of a day for him than it was for me, but this is what I was meant to do. So.
Tissues and crying, boys and girls.
That's the end of Updates at Noon today. Wrapping up with a reminder of our top story: Malaysians urged to perform duties as responsible citizens. Tune in to News at 10, coming up at 10 p.m. on saluran Berita RTM, yang SAHIH di RTM, #MyPRU15. Till then, I'm Mohana Priya. Thank you for your company.